Good morning, everybody. My name is Devin Smith, and I'd like to welcome you to the Summer Online Learning Series, hosted by Continuing and Professional Education, or CAPE, at the University of St. Thomas. Thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of time with us this morning. I know we're going to have a very interesting session, a very practical session as well. Today's session is titled Harnessing the Power of Social Media. And we're really eager to hear from Katie Berry, our special guest, as she leads us on a deep dive of social media platforms and how to leverage them for maximum impact. And I'm going to introduce Katie in just a minute, but I do have a couple of reminders I'd like to share. So after today, our next online learning series session to close out the summer is on August 12th with Blake Darso. And Blake Darso is going to deliver a talk titled 40 Years of Jim Collins in 40 Minutes, which is a reflection on the key lessons of popular business author Jim Collins. Jim Collins wrote some mega popular books, bestsellers like Good to Great, and his writing contains some really interesting insights on what it takes to build enduring organizations. So whether you're a Collins fan or if this is the first you've ever heard of him, I'd recommend registering for this session as we close out the summer online learning series. And I'd also like to just mention that we are currently planning our fall online learning series as well. And we hope that you'll continue joining us during the fall semester if you find these events to be helpful. So stay tuned for some dates in a future email message about that. So one other reminder for today's session, we're going to reserve Q&A time for the end of Katie's talk, but I'd actually encourage you to send in questions throughout the session using the chat feature here in Zoom. And this really helps me and our behind the scenes team to sift through and group together questions that might be better asked together before we reach that Q&A time at the end. And when you send in a question via the Zoom chat, just be sure to address it to all panelists so that myself and our behind the scenes team can read your inquiry and work on that as the session is going on. We'll get through as many questions as we can, and we will, as always, end this session, the whole thing, by 8:55 a.m. Central Time to give you a few moments to transition if you've got a meeting right after this. If you have any technical difficulties at all, just know that the session is being recorded, and you're going to receive a link to the video just a few business days from now. Okay, I think that's everything. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Katie Berry. Katie Berry is an Assistant Vice President of Social Media Strategy at US Bank. And notably, she led the bank's Super Bowl 52 social media campaign where US Bank achieved its highest ever social share of voice, which is really impressive. And I remember some of those ads as well. Katie teaches in a few St. Thomas venues, including CAPE offerings like the Certified Digital Marketing Professional Program, the Strategic Social Media Program, and then also in St. Thomas MBA classrooms as well. At US Bank, Katie manages all social media advertising for the bank's brand campaign, wealth management, small business, and mortgage categories, along with many other bank products and services. And she also oversees the bank's branded content partnerships, which include, I think, some pretty impressive names like the New York Times, People Magazine, Forbes, Money Magazine, and Pandora. And Katie is really passionate about telling the stories of real people achieving their goals. Prior to her work at US Bank, she previously worked as a strategist at United Health Group as well. So Katie, thank you so much for being with us today. I'll hand it over to you. The floor is yours.
Great. Well, thanks, Devin, and good morning to everyone online. Thank you so much for having me. Whether you love social media personally or professionally, or whether you hate social media, since the MySpace era and then Mark Zuckerberg kind of taking over in 2004, 2005, it's really an integral part of our lives, right? It's big tech. It's similar to Google and Apple, and it's something that it really infuses a lot of our daily interactions. So I'm excited to help you learn how to harness the power of social media. And of course, excited for the conversation that we're going to have as well. So the foundation of this that we're going to start with is how to create a social media strategy, right? If you don't know how to create a social media strategy, you don't really know what to do and the effectiveness that social media can have for your organization. We'll also talk about the difference between paid and organic posts. I think sometimes there's a myth that you have to put a ton of money behind your organic work to get traction. That's not necessarily true, but a little bit of budget can be really helpful. We'll discuss the right channels for your organization. Oh my goodness, there's so many channels out there right now. It can be really hard to know kind of where do you need to go, what channels do you need to use. And then we'll talk about social media content success. I assume that's something that's of great interest to all of you on the line. Low and no cost strategies to increase your brand's reach and awareness. We'll talk about employee advocacy. We'll talk about brand advocacy, and then how to set up social media ads. So I have a tight 40, and that last couple 5 to 10 minutes, I will actually do a live ad demo. So I know that this is recorded. There's quite a bit of information here, but I encourage you to go back and look at the slides and rewatch that recording to use that demo in a slightly slower pace. So when I said that social media is everywhere, it kind of is. So more than 3 billion people worldwide are using social media daily, and our average user spends 2 hours and 24 minutes on social media per day. And this is a slide that I update continuously. I've been teaching for about 3 years, and it just goes up and up, right? It used to be 2.5 billion and then 2.7 billion. And also that, it used to be an hour and 47 minutes and then 2 hours, and now 2 hours and 24 minutes. So I think especially in the last year, as more people have been kind of hunkered down at home, that social media outlet has only increased. And when we say that social media is everywhere, there's kind of two main platforms that really are everywhere. So YouTube, you can see this is a Pew Research study from 2019. This is the most recent data that we have. So Pew will release another study later this year. But that percentage of US adults who say they ever use the following platforms, you can see that YouTube at 73% and Facebook at 69% far outpace everyone else. So what I think is really interesting about YouTube is that it has become sort of an infotainment channel. So while it's entertaining, there's also a lot of education on YouTube. So whether you're trying to learn how to make the perfect chocolate cake or how to change your oil, you can just about learn anything on YouTube. So it's kind of a platform that really spans all generations. Facebook is certainly growing and not stopping. I think here, what I would question is how engaged are people on Facebook? I think for a lot of people, Facebook has become a place that is a little bit of a turnoff in the last couple of years, especially with politics. Then you see Instagram, still a decent amount of usage, but not nearly that. I mean, it's a 40% gap, 30% gap between those two. And then for all of kind of the attention that something like a Twitter takes up, really, less than a quarter of Americans are using Twitter. You can see here that the elephant in the room that's missing is TikTok. This was before TikTok was being widely used in the US. I think it was still in beta in China at the time. But certainly TikTok is one where it's not up with YouTube or Facebook, but it has really had a meteoric rise, especially kind of since the last year when people were just looking for something to do to kind of bust the boredom, if you will. And then that platform frequency. So it's not just that they use it, but how often do they use it? You can see with Twitter, maybe they have an account, but they don't use it all that often. Facebook, they're checking several times a day. Instagram, they're checking, a decent amount every day. And then YouTube, they may be using it less often, but I would argue that when they're on YouTube, especially when you kind of go down a rabbit hole, if you're learning to make the perfect chocolate cake or you're learning how to, put a braid in your daughter's hair, you're going to spend a longer period of time there. So it's frequency versus intensity. So there's really 7 steps to building a social media strategy. And as Devin said, there's some courses at St. Thomas that really do a huge deep dive into these topics. So if it's of significant interest to you, I encourage you to check those out. But we'll quickly go through them today. So first, determine the goal of being on social media. If you work for a for-profit, if you work for a nonprofit, or even if you're just looking to grow your own personal small business or your personal brand, social media takes time. It takes emotional energy. It takes mental energy. So figuring out why you're on there is critically important. Then figure out who are you trying to reach, right? There's I guess you could say literally millions of audiences that you could reach on social media. So determine who that audience is, decide on what platforms you'll reach that audience. It's not important that you be on every single platform, but then also you need to learn how to measure it, right? How do you measure your social media success versus other marketing channel success versus other outreach channels? As I said, we all have limited time in our days. Creating and posting those social media content, that to me is the most fun, the most engaging. As I said in my bio, I like to be a natural born kind of storyteller. And then also research the competition, engage in social media listening, look for where those opportunities are, right? So I think that you could either research your competition and kind of in a way replicate it or do something very similar to them. Or you can look for that white space, right? Where is there a niche? Where is something not being talked about? In which case you can kind of be that thought leader. And then monitor, evaluate, and adjust your strategy. That's way far down the line, so we won't get a lot into that today. But as social media is always evolving, it's very important to monitor and optimize and see what's next and what you could be doing better. So there's really 4 types of social media goals. I would say that there's 3 types of social media goals, and the 4th goal is critically important to your consumer. So the first is just simply awareness, right? Reach and increasing brand awareness, letting people know that you exist. Hey, I have something out there and we exist, and I think that you should know about it. The second piece is consideration, and this can be just as much for a nonprofit as a for-profit. So driving traffic to a website, driving engagement with your social media posts, driving app installs, driving lead generation. Lead generation could be an ad that you use, and then somebody gives you their email address. So then you can convert that into email marketing. Then number 3, which is what a lot of C-suite people are most engaged or most interested in, is those conversion activities, right? Completing an application, checking out the online shopping cart, driving traffic to a physical store or location, right? So that's kind of, where the rubber meets the road and the true ROI of social media occurs. But it's just as important to have goals 1 and 2 before you can really get to goal 3. And then number 4 is really responding to customer issues via social media channels. Nowadays, with the way that people casually use social media, if I tag at Delta on social media, I'm expecting them to respond as if I called them, as if I walked up to a counter in an airport. So it can be a little bit of a pain because you just want to focus on your message and almost be a megaphone to say, hey, we have something to share with you. But it's just as important to be receptive to those social media queries from your customers. And bad social media customer service can really impact your brand. At a high level, it can impact your brand and your reputation. So this seems like a lot, right? This slide alone could be, an hour-long course. So that's where that asterisk comes in. When starting out, set attainable goals that you can build on. It's not necessary that you try to do all of these things at once. I would argue that you should always be providing good customer service, but the other pieces are not necessary. Pick one thing, get some wins, get some momentum, and then go from there. So your audience will also help you determine what to focus on. So consider these following questions. Who is your typical customer? How old are they? Are they male, female, non-binary? What is their income and education level? And then just as interesting, what are they interested in outside of your product and service, right? Try to build that full marketing persona, and that will also help you when you target or develop content. So if you're really interested in hiking and okay, that's great. I like that you like hiking, but what else are you interested in? Maybe you're interested in sports, or you're also a pet owner. So kind of building out that persona will help you develop creative content that people want to engage with. As I already said, it's not necessary to be on every platform. Managing that unique content can be really time consuming. So if you don't have a specific reason for being on a platform, consider not having a presence. But also, while each platform may have unique content, that brand tone, that voice and style should feel consistent so people know what to expect from your brand. If your Facebook presence and your TikTok presence are completely different with no kind of through line or continuity, it's likely that it will impact that brand awareness, that connection back to who you are. So I do want to do just a quick deep dive into the platforms themselves. So Facebook to me is really the kitchen sink, right? People use it to stay in touch with family and friends. It can be very polarizing. I think especially in the last couple of years, it's become very polarizing. But with over 1 billion users, it's a great platform to deepen that customer loyalty and reach existing customers. That said, it's hard to gain attention, right? So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of advertisers. It can be difficult to cut through that noise. And organic posts typically only reach a very small percentage of your followers. It used to be 6%. Now it's roughly 2 to 4%, depending on the brand. But that said, goodness gracious, it is cheap. So it has the lowest cost if you're running paid advertising. So if you have an organic post, you could boost that for $25 or $50 and significantly increase your reach. To reach an individual on Facebook typically costs 3 to 5 cents per person, which is historically low pricing. And then these are really more for your reference later on, just to kind of show you that age breakdown. Facebook skews a little bit older in terms of their actively engaged audience. Instagram, the bar for visually appealing creative is really, really high. So great for high quality fashion and beauty content, food brands. Majority of Instagram users are under 30. So many young people are leaving Facebook or only staying on there to stay in touch with grandma. Organic content's easily discoverable using on-branded hashtags. So I think sometimes there's a tendency to say, I want a hashtag, and it's very specific, right? So hashtag University of St. Thomas exec ed, not to poke fun at them. I'm sure they would never do that. But really, the better hashtag would be hashtag marketing 101, right? That's really what we're doing here. Have hashtags that people actually use. And then one quick advertising tip, since Facebook owns Instagram, you can use something called mixed placement ads, which lets you use the same creative across Facebook and Instagram. So this is cost effective. It lets you take advantage of two unique audiences without needing different creative. And you can see here, the skews much, much younger. So Twitter, this is kind of the platform that people turn to stay informed. It's best for driving that real-time engagement during events, especially when using event hashtags. A hashtag that I've been using frequently is hashtag MNWX, which is Minnesota weather. Where I live in the Twin Cities, we had a lot of hail last night and a lot of rain. So, when it's real-time news, that's where I go. But that said, posts should be monitored for trolls, which are quite common. I would say that there's kind of a special brand of negativity on Twitter. It's the only place where I've ever had to turn off advertising just because of the negativity surrounding what would be considered very innocent topics. People just kind of go there looking for a fight. But what's interesting about this is when you look at this slide here, you'll see that just in general, Twitter just does not have the momentum. It does not have the amount of people that the other platforms have. So Snapchat is interesting. I thought that Snapchat might go the way of the dodo bird with TikTok, but it's holding its own. So it's still one of the best places to reach teenagers. There's less competition from other brands. Those shorter length videos with a shorter lifespan can be a creative challenge, but when done well, they're really great for increasing product awareness. So you can see here, these are some filters used for X-Men where the X-Men characters went over your body and over your head. So in general, people are looking to be entertained here, right? The branding, they're excited to engage with brands because it actually is fun. It's very clever. And so overall, those lenses and filter options increase advertiser reach beyond just the initial person who saw the ad. So if you use a lens or a filter and then you share that to your Snapchat, your story, or if you send this to a friend, you're just expanding that reach even further. Overall, Snap video ads command very high engagement compared to other platforms. The first times that I started advertising on them, I thought there's no way that these are possibly the right metrics just because of how high they were, but it's consistently held its own. And as you can see here, if you're 30 and older, you're probably not on Snapchat. If you're 65 plus, you're almost certainly not on it. But you can see that this is certainly a sweet spot for that Gen Z audience. And then Pinterest. So Pinterest is what I call that virtual scrapbook. You save content via pinning. So it's very, very strong in driving website traffic to relevant lists and articles. If you find, the perfect chocolate cake recipe on Pinterest, you might pin it. You might go to their website. So this is just fantastic for really driving people down the funnel into your brand. It's best for that helpful life stage content. So big transitions, moving to college, getting married, having a baby. So those retailers related to food, arts and crafts, fashion, travel, just kind of general wellness and living. Women vastly outnumber men on Pinterest. And interestingly enough, it has the highest average order value for social media shoppers. So generally, Pinterest users tend to be a little bit more affluent. Content should be visually appealing, very colorful. These are people that love, Chip and Joanna Gaines, Martha Stewart. They're looking for kind of that aesthetically appealing flavor. And then you can see here that gender. I wasn't kidding. When you look at this, 42% of females are on Pinterest, only 15% of men. Interestingly enough, there's a higher index of rural people using Pinterest. So if that's your target audience, that might be something to consider. And then we get to LinkedIn. LinkedIn's user base is really well educated, making it a hub for in-depth industry-specific content. It's more serious and professional compared to the other platforms. What's really interesting here is also the length of content. I think there's a lot more room on LinkedIn for nuance, right? So longer form blog posts, thought leadership that just wouldn't work on the other platforms. So great for B2B brands, great for lead generation. You do reach a unique audience of executives and business decision makers. There's certainly a lot of people on LinkedIn that are not on any of the other platforms, right? Personally, social media does not sort of generate joy or excitement for them, but they're on LinkedIn for professional reasons. I think because of that, and because of kind of this slightly more affluent, more educated audience, LinkedIn is one of the more expensive platforms to advertise on. And when I say more expensive, I mean truly by leaps and bounds, right? It can be, reaching just one person on LinkedIn, depending on who you're targeting, could easily be, $3, $5. And when you look at that compared to Facebook, which was 3 cents or 5 cents, it's certainly, something to consider as you look at budget. And then you can see here that overall, demographically, age-wise, it's pretty well spread out, but compared to a Facebook, there's just not the same number of people there. And then YouTube. So overall, similar to the photography quality on Instagram, that bar for videos on YouTube is high. Humorous content does really well. This ad you can see from Geico, the unskippable high five. It was a 5-second ad that literally they gave a high five and they said they were hanging on wires and swinging, and they said, and by the time that this voiceover is done, the ad will be done too. Like Pinterest, it has strong SEO potential. Education and how-to content performs really well, but some ad types cannot be skipped. So if you force a user to view your content before getting their desired video, that's okay. But if you have a very high ad frequency and someone sees your ad 5 or 6 times, rather than cementing your brand or raising that brand awareness or consideration, it's actually a huge turnoff, and it can kind of annoy people with your brand. You can see here overall, just YouTube, it's almost everybody in the country, I feel like, when you look at kind of that gender and age breakdown. And then TikTok, everybody's kind of the social media darling of the last couple of years. So 48% of users are ages 16 to 24. It's been downloaded over 200 million times in the US. It has over 1 billion global users. So it came to the US later in its sort of shelf life, if you will. What's interesting about TikTok is that it has unlimited rights to reuse and repurpose your content. And that's whether you're an individual user or a brand. So it's royalty free, fully transferable on any platform. I saw TikTok made their first commercial that just had basically all user generated content. So content may also take on a life of its own as users interpret your brand. We saw this with an acne company. There was, they were saying, get rid of acne, and there was a grandma rapping about skincare. Other people saying, my acne is beautiful. I don't feel the need to change my face. So anything can happen. You can see here the Chipotle lid flip. This was an ad challenge sponsored by Chipotle, where the intention was to go and go to Chipotle, similar to the former water bottle flip challenge, but that also has a monkey holding a popsicle. So I don't know what that has to do with Chipotle, truly showing that this platform, kind of anything can happen. But wow, the reach is just bananas. So looking at this demographic, you can see that it skews much younger, especially, that 18 and younger generation. But fun fact is around Jennifer Lopez. So she has 45 million followers on Twitter and 5 million followers on TikTok, but she shared a video on Twitter that got 2 million views. And then that same video on TikTok got 71 million views. So great content certainly makes its way around. The one thing for your brand, and hopefully this is a safe space to say this, is in terms of keeping your customer data safe or keeping kind of your data safe as a brand, there's a lot of questions about what the owners of TikTok do. It's a Chinese company. And so although all of the social media platforms, in my opinion, are quite shady when it comes to data and using that data, in particular, this one has sort of no transparency about how they use that data. So for highly regulated brands, that's sort of a consideration. Some brands are not on TikTok just because of that. But the vast number of users, the vast growth, TikTok does not seem to be going away. So certainly something for you to consider. So that was an overview of all of the social media platforms in about 10 minutes. You can see, if you see me looking over to the side, I'm just pacing and making sure that we're running on time. So looking at your metrics, right? We've talked about the platforms, but how do you measure it? So there's a couple key measurements that you can use, whether it's a paid or organic post. So the first is just reach. So post reach is the number of unique users who saw your content. So this allows you to see if your content's actually reaching your followers. It could even reach people that don't follow you if your followers share that content. Clicks is the number of clicks on your content, your company name, or your logo. So clicks can be a little bit of a misleading metric. Link clicks is the metric that you want to use to say, are you driving people to your website? Are you driving people through that marketing funnel? Then you get to engagement. So engagement is that total number of social interactions, likes, comments, and shares divided by the number of impressions. So that shows you how open is your audience to interacting with you. I don't know if you know any social media lurkers or if you're one yourself. A lot of times you'll have reach where people have seen your content, but they're not likely to engage with it, right? They see it, they may have even clicked out or watched a video, but they're not going to like it. They're not going to comment on it. So, if you don't have high engagement, it's not the end of the world, but it is something to think about. And then sentiment. Sentiment goes hand in hand with that customer care that we talked about earlier. So reviewing comments and engagements to see if it's positive, negative, or neutral. Most of your sentiment on social media will be neutral. It's not like people will sing your praises or hate you, but certainly there will be key moments in any brand's life where it can get quite negative, and it's very important that you understand that and acknowledge that. And if you have a lot of negative feedback for a time, maybe stop posting. Maybe your brand just kind of needs to take a social media timeout. And then creating and sharing content. So use those metrics to guide creating your content by evaluating which topics had the highest reach, the highest click through, the highest engagement. And then that will help you develop a social media content calendar. So in essence, it's kind of like throwing the spaghetti noodle against the wall. You can't really do it wrong. You just have to kind of dive in and see what works. So over time, you will see what social media content works, and then you can map out a social media content calendar. So that content calendar has lots of opportunities for testing and learn, right? So short post copy versus long post copy, stock images versus real images. I have seen, I'll give you a little behind the scenes peek at US Bank. One thing that really has interested me is as we hear that women control the finances in a lot of their households. And what I found is when I do stuff for wealth management, images that have women much outperform images that have men. So, there's always things to learn from the imagery that you choose. Images versus videos. And then if you're running ads, test different calls to action, right? So learn more, or, shop here or buy now. There's a lot of different calls to actions that you can set up and manually select. So testing different calls to action is also a good rule of thumb. And then once you start to figure out what works for you and develop that content calendar, this is, I would say, one of the most important things that help you take away from this presentation. It's important to develop a sort of an 80-20 rule or a 70-30 rule, where 80% of your post should inform, educate, or entertain your audience, and 20% can directly promote your brand. I used the phrase megaphone before, and I think sometimes people really are just shouting about their brand, right? It's a megaphone screaming into the void about, pick me, consider me, buy things from me. But really, that's not why your followers are following you. They're following you for educational content. They're following you to laugh, to be entertained as they're scrolling. So you can adjust that ratio and include more branded content if you find that your audience is more receptive. But if you're just 100%, if you have a 0-100 ratio and all you do is promote your brand, you're not going to be successful in social media. And to be quite frank, it's probably not a tactic that's a good fit for you. And then once that calendar is created, you can use scheduling tools to schedule your posts in advance. There's a ton of these: Hootsuite, Spreadfast, Sprout Social. So there's a number of different tools that you can Google. And then the best types of content by platform, Facebook, concise text, links to helpful content; Instagram, those really high quality images; short videos; Twitter is a little bit of everything, including polls. Polls can be really interesting for market research. LinkedIn has more nuance, right? Text links, blog posts, group discussions; YouTube, videos of all lengths. If you have something really, really captivating and interesting, it's not necessary that your YouTube video be 2 minutes or 4 minutes. People will stick with it. And they can also scroll forward and speed up your video if they want to kind of get to the good stuff. Pinterest, images and GIFs; text that links that helpful, relevant content; and then Snapchat and TikTok, short videos, lighthearted, funny content. Snapchat and TikTok is not where people are going to, be serious. They're there to be playful and entertained. So just a few more things that I think are really important with social media content. Let those visuals tell your story. So visuals are processed much faster than text. We see the research on people remembering what they see versus what they read. And of course, our younger audience shows a very strong preference for visual context. So you can see here, even just, the dog in the box versus the paw. I personally think the dog in the box is sort of much more, you sort of just are drawn to that. And then just a couple content myths. So you don't have to use paid social media. So with good content and advocates, brands can thrive on little to no budget. And in fact, the best way to see which post should be sponsored is to post them organically, right? See where you get traction, see where people are willing to engage, and then put social media dollars behind it. Good brands also need to have a POV. They need to have creative risk taking. I think sort of there is a sea of sameness. You're among brands, you're also competing with people's personal interests, right? So whether that's their family, their vacation, cute kids, cute pets, their favorite sports team, it can be hard to grab attention. So if you're just sort of being in that beige kind of middle area, that can also make it difficult to attract attention. So you can see here, just stunning visuals. NatGeo is one of my favorite brands. The story that they're telling, it makes you feel like you're going on the adventure with them. You can also kind of use humor. Wendy's is notorious for using humor. You can see at Wendy's, what would you call this? It's clearly a McDonald's delivery truck. And then Wendy says, is it a garbage truck? You'll also see the Charmin ad, get you a TP that does it all, hashtag Dolly Parton challenge. So there's a lot of just sort of organic challenges out there on social media, whether it's flipping a water bottle or the Dolly Parton challenge. Capitalizing on these organic hashtags, becoming part of the general social media conversation, kind of the cultural moment, can be just as impactful as sort of trying to, as I said, develop your own hashtag or kind of try to create your own moment. And then involve your fans and followers. So you can see here in Netflix, which movie scene brings up your deepest nostalgia for childhood? Ours is this, and that's a quick scene from Free Willy. So really just engage, right? This is kind of that type of content where they're not directly promoting their brand, or Netflix, show us the last meme you saved your camera roll and we'll give you a film to watch this weekend. So providing sort of value, or this one from Legos, where they're asking Star Wars fans to help them decide some of their product, right? So engage. People like to share their opinions. I think we've all become a pretty opinionated bunch. And then lastly, advocacy. So Vans can serve as great organic word of mouth social media marketing. This extends your marketing budget. And in general, we all prefer hearing from people versus brands, right? It's why thought leaders from companies on LinkedIn can be so much more impactful than the brand themselves, right? So you can see here, this is Love Your Melon, a great local company. You can see here, cute picture, mom and baby wearing it, tagged at Love Your Melon. That got 373 likes. And then you can see here, this is another one where his picture is not nearly as stylized as her, but, sporting my new hashtag Love Your Melon hat. So just in general, if you have a product where you can get really loyal fans, they can become your best and most powerful social media advocates. And obviously Love Your Melon didn't, force either of these people to do this. They've just sort of naturally built up that presence because people really like the product. And then the other myth is that social media content requires an agency. And while nothing replaces a talented graphic designer, there's numerous simple do-it-yourself things that are available at low to no cost to make great social media visuals. So when you get this deck, just a couple for you to consider. Canva is one of my personal favorites. It's really easy to create visuals, no graphic design experience is needed. And you can actually sync your Canva account to your social media accounts, and it can just post directly from you create something on Canva, and then it naturally posts right on your social media channels. So I really like Canva. And then you have PictoChart, which is great for infographics, and then YouTube video editors. So you can easily splice or trim video online. There's a ton of different video editors out there. And now a lot of them are designed actually just to be used right on your phone, right? So you shoot video on your phone, you can edit it on your phone and post it on your phone. We've come so far in the last 10 years around how easy it is to post. So in the last 5, it looks like I have 7 minutes. In the last 7 minutes, I just want to do a demo. So why social media advertising? I'd said that it's not necessary, but perhaps it's a little bit critical because it all depends on kind of what your expectations are, right? As I said, this is actually a little bit of an older graphic, but I keep it here on purpose to show kind of where we've gone. This graphic I pulled about 3 years ago. Now on Facebook, seeing your organic content, like I said, is about 2 to 4%. So a lot of people just aren't seeing your content unless you're putting a little bit of money behind it. So I did just want to show you 2 things before I do an ad demo. And Devin, are you able to still see this?
Yeah, I still see your PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect. And I actually was trying to show my browser. Can you see that browser now?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for everyone for your patience. I just want to make sure that you're seeing it. So this is Target's main page on Facebook, and I can scroll all the way to the top so you can see where you would find this. You can see that this is just Target's page, and then there's a section down here called Page Transparency, and this is something that is new, but it lets you see all the ads that a brand is running. So you can see ads from this page. This page is currently running ads, and then you can click to something, and it's called their ad library, and it will show you all of their ads that are currently running. So it's funny, I checked on this morning, and the ads for the 14th were not up. You can see the ads from the 13th, and now we've got obviously a lot of back to school. So whether you and your family are ready for back to school, we've got welcome back teachers, welcome to 4th grade. So I just think it's kind of fun to see what is out there, and I think that it's very it lets you see what your competitors are doing. It just sort of lets you get a sense, and you can look this up for any brand, any nonprofit. So if you're an advertising nerd like I am, it's kind of fun to see what's out there. Anybody can access that. You don't need any special permissions. You just need a Facebook account. And this is the Facebook Business Manager. Facebook Business Manager is the easiest platform to set ads up on. It would make sense. Facebook's always about the user experience. So I will do a demo with this one, and then know that the principles of this can translate to pretty much any platform. So it's built like a pyramid where you have a campaign, which is your overarching umbrella. You have ad sets, which are the different target audiences. And then within those audiences, you can have different ads. So you could have a campaign for back to school. You could have an ad set targeting parents of elementary school students, middle school students, and high school students. So you'd have 3 ad sets, 3 targets, and then the ads could be directly targeted, right? So the elementary school parents ad set would receive elementary school supply ads, the middle school supplies, and high school, etc. So it sounds kind of complicated, but when you get into it, it's actually not that difficult. So as I said, there's 3 main goals. We have awareness, consideration, and conversion. So I'm just going to say brand awareness. I just want to reach as many people as possible. You always label this. So today I will label this online education. And then you can start to set up your audience. So you can do a lot with A/B testing with budget optimization. I honestly think that Facebook knows pretty well what to do to kind of get me the best results. So I'm not going to click any of that. So this is our ad set. So I'm going to name that online 1. And then we have our daily budget. So I'm just going to put my daily budget as $5. My start date is right now, and I will set an end date. So I'm going to set an end date for tomorrow. I'll say, here we go. I'll end it tomorrow. And it doesn't like that. So I'll say, I'll end it today at 5 o'clock. And it's not going to like that. So we'll just make this. Okay. And then this is where you can create your audience. You can see here, this is your location. So I'm just going to edit this to say, I want people living recently in Minnesota. Okay. So we've selected Minnesota. I'm going to target everyone 18 to 65 plus. But I am going to add an interest here. So you can tell I'd already mentioned hiking. So I'm going to say that I'm interested in hiking. Actually, let's do hiking boots. So there's 6 million people that were interested in hiking boots. So I'm always on the lookout for new gear. I'm going to do automatic placement. So Facebook will tell me, Facebook will just place this automatically versus me actually manually choosing where to place. So you can see all edits are saved. So I'm going to go back. So so you can edit by just about anything. You can edit by geography. You can target up to a 10-mile radius. You can edit by interest. You can edit by age. You can edit by profession. So just about anything. And then you always want to label everything. So again, I will say online 1, because it makes it a lot easier if you don't label things correctly, it gets a little bit wonky. So this is your Facebook page. This is just an old dummy page that I use for demos. So I'm going to create my ad. So to create my ad, I'm going to do a single image or video because I just want to keep it simple, right? So you can see here then, this is the ad creative that they have right now. So I'm going to edit that. And this is that primary text. So I'm going to say, shop for new hiking boots today. And then I'm going to add a website. So shop new boot styles. I'm going to do REI. You can see here that they're yelling because I don't have a call to action. So I'm going to scroll down here. So there's a lot of these, and I'm going to say shop now. So you can see here that this is the page that we selected. I put our text as shop for new hiking boots today. I put our smaller thing as shop new boot styles, and then I pulled in rei.com. And rei.com actually pulled in this from backpacking to cycling. They just pulled that in automatically from their website, and the shop now budget, or excuse me, shop now button. So the only thing missing here would really be that media. So you can see here that this is just pulling in this page. So probably what I want to do is edit this and change media. And I'm just going to put in just a dog picture because I like to hike with my dog. So I'll say next. So although the page is not perfect because this is just a dummy page, you can see shop for new hiking boots today. And shop now, and this is the URL. So this is really it. And I know that I did that really quickly, and then you would just hit publish, and that's kind of how you would do it. So I know I did that really quickly, but I just wanted to show you that you can do this too. There's just 3 main steps. You can't really break it. If you break it, Facebook will give you these arrows saying, you know, this doesn't work. But that's all that there is to it. And there's also videos on YouTube for just about any ad platform. So you can just run that parallel. So you can actively set up an ad while simultaneously watching a video, and it will show you all the steps as well. So I really thank you so much for your attention. I know that this is a lot of social media for 40 minutes, but really excited to see what questions you have. And over to you, Devin.
Katie, thank you so much. That was a tidal wave of great information. I mean,
Tsunami of social.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I think as a user of social media, it was just really interesting to kind of see under the hood a little bit. So thanks so much for sharing your presentation. As you expected, we have a lot of questions coming in, and so we should switch to Q&A right now to make the most of the rest of our time. To our guests who are here with us, if you do have other questions, send them through. We'll get through as many as we can before we close at 8:55. So, first question that came up, Katie, that I wanted to bring to your attention. Can you talk a little bit, this is kind of like an organizational question with social media at different companies. Can you talk a little bit about where you've seen the social media function sit in an organization? You know, there's public relations, there's communications, marketing, customer service, all kind of working together, I would imagine, for some of this. Do you have an opinion about how it works best in an organization?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So typically it sits under marketing, and the reason for marketing is because I would assume that if you are going to do paid advertising, you would do paid marketing, right? So whether you have a media team or you set it up yourself, that money would typically come from your marketing budget. That said, there's actually a specific job function that's social media communications and customer care, and that's actually typically now someone's job. So the reason that it's someone's job is it's a person in customer care versus someone in social media, because I don't have privy to all the data. And I'll just give US Bank for an example, if that's okay. We have a customer care team, but they're going to be a team completely separate from me that can actually go in and look at people's accounts and help them, right? And the typical marketer does not have that sort of training and background. In terms of PR or corporate comms, we work hand in hand. When we have a big event coming up, they're helping us. They're saying, this is a story that we want to put out there. And then we help shape that narrative for the social platform, right? So maybe they say, we have an event coming up, and we create an Instagram story for them. But you're right, that all works together. I think it sits best in marketing, but you have to have all 3 legs of the stool, or it doesn't work.
Great, thanks for that insight. There were a couple people interested in that. We'll change gears here. You know, since Facebook and Instagram are integrated in some way, can you run ads on both platforms by using that same ad manager that you just gave a demonstration of?
So you can actually submit, so that automatic placements actually is automatically selected that it will run it on Instagram. So if you don't want to run on Instagram, you would deselect Instagram. So the way that Facebook works now is when you set that ad manager up, or not you, when you set up an ad, it's automatically going to run it everywhere that it can, and that includes Instagram just by default.
Great. Got another question about a different platform. This is just like peppering you with all
No,
the
I
different
think let's rapid fire, because
angles.
I want to get as
Yeah.
many questions as
Yeah,
possible.
it's
I love
great.
it.
So another question kind of about B2B, actually, business to business. So when using LinkedIn for business to business, what are good methods for achieving more views, more likes, comments, more engagement on, articles that you would post on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would say on LinkedIn is an employee advocacy program. So there's formal advocacy programs. There's a program called LinkedIn Pulse that you can actually upload a lot of content. So you can upload both your content and industry relevant content, and then your employees can go out and share that. But I would say that formalizing that, even if it's just sending an email once a week to your employees saying, hey, would you post this on LinkedIn, depending on the size of your company, to say, hey, here's some industry news, here's some things we want people to promote. It's very similar to what I talked about kind of brand advocacy in the Love Your Melon example. Your employees can do that as well. And whether it's a small business or a large company, that is incredibly impactful. People like to hear from people. And honestly, if you have a company of 50 people, they may have more contacts than people actually following your brand on LinkedIn. So that to me is your best tactic for growth.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not what I would have thought of. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Here's kind of a more broad question for you, Katie. So how do you know who your social media audience is as opposed to your customer base in general? Is there a difference, or how do you determine that?
Yeah, I think it's really by who engages with your content, right? So I think who engages with your organic content. A silly, dumb example is like you post things with dogs, or you post things with cats, right? And over time, which one gets more results? But I think that the bigger thing is if you put a little bit of money behind your paid, I think that it can be really impactful. So that ad example I gave where I said, okay, we're going to buy school supplies, but you have, elementary, middle school, and high school parents. If you see a ton of engagement with elementary school parents, that's lets you know like your brand has a sweet spot of parents of young children. And that is a super simple example, but just kind of figuring that out, right? You can target by age. So maybe you target by age, you can target by geography. Maybe you're a country, or excuse me, a company that's all across the country, and you target by state, and you see like, gosh, actually, Texas has just blown it out of the water, and we have way more engagement with people from Texas. There's more people in Texas, but you can look at percentage, you can look at engagement rate, you can look at click-through rate to say, gosh, maybe we should target in Texas. So that's really the best way to learn.
Yeah, it really feels kind of like art and science a little bit. There's so many dials you can turn to, influence and experiment and try. But it takes experimentation and innovation to try it. So
there's no way just to nail it, right? So, and I've, I manage nonprofit social media. There's no way just to nail it. You just have to try and learn and test.
Yeah. I've got another question. It just came in actually, and we have a lot of nonprofit professionals in our community who might be listening in on this. I think it's relevant. What social media platform do you think nonprofits should concentrate on, and what they can do specifically to encourage donations or maybe involvement with their organization?
Yeah, I think the first question I would ask is, what is the age that you are targeting, right? And typically, a nonprofit, you would say, well, like it's all ages. But if you're really saying, I want to get younger volunteers in the door, maybe TikTok, maybe Snapchat, right? An example could be if you're working at the Humane Society, show what that volunteer day is like, right? In a TikTok, make it fun, make it engaging. I do think that in terms of engagement, I think videos can be really engaging, right? To show kind of what is it like if you volunteer there. But I think in terms of donations, I think it's all comes down to that storytelling piece. So whether you're featuring individuals that will be helped by your organization, I personally think tell a story. Telling stories on social media is what really, really engages people. Just driving people to a donate now page is not going to work. But you can even embed donate clicks, or link clicks into your videos on YouTube, for example. But tell that story first. And I'm happy to, as I said, Devin, I'm happy to connect and do informational interviews as well as helpful.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, another question about Pinterest actually this time. So how would you feel about a service-oriented company like a clinic or something related to healthcare using a platform like Pinterest to promote their brand?
Yeah, well, Pinterest is fascinating in the health and wellness space. So there's just a ton of stuff. I myself have even done 30-day fitness challenges just off of Pinterest, right? I get a sheet and I'm like, great, I can do that in 30 days. And so actually there's a lot of kind of information around health and wellness. So I would say for a clinic, that would be my way in. I would focus on health and wellness, whether that's women's wellness. I mean, I would lean towards women's wellness just because there's so many women, but really provide that content that's helpful, drive them to your website and start to raise that brand awareness. Pinterest is fantastic for actually health. I'd highly recommend.
Okay, thanks. I'm sure someone's thankful for that answer. One thing we didn't talk about on this, and I'm just curious if you have a perspective, this question came in, what are your thoughts about Google ads? Are they effective? How should an organization consider budgeting for those as opposed to maybe some of the social media paid stuff?
Yeah, no, they are hand in hand. And what I find is really Google is a primary driver of business. I think, especially now with Google Maps, if you search for pizza places, you can either have a paid ad or even organically, they'll pull up the pizza places, but they'll pull them up based on reviews. So I would say that running paid Google ads, especially if there's a white space in your area, if you say, okay, you know what, in St. Paul, there's not a lot of, salons, which obviously there's a lot of salons, but you find that area, and that's actually a primary way that people find you nowadays. I have a small business that I own with my spouse, and we find that when we say, how'd you hear about us? People say, oh, I just Googled you, right? Or, oh, I looked at your Google reviews and you had all 5-star reviews. So I think that's also a way that people that are really have a lot of love for your brand can really help you, is actually be very bold and say, if you wouldn't mind, would you leave us a 5-star Google review, right? So it boosts you in search rankings. Google is incredibly powerful. I would argue that in terms of driving traffic into a physical location, Google is more impactful than any social media platform. And in terms of driving clicks, I would also say that Google is more impactful. There's a certified digital marketing professional course that I teach the social piece on. Someone else teaches the search piece. Very, very important. Cannot emphasize that enough.
Yep, that's great. And someone sent in a comment too that I believe is true. Maybe maybe you don't, but it's something others could look into. But again, for our nonprofit professionals who might be on the call, I believe that Google does offer some discounting or even free ads for nonprofit organizations as well, if they can verify that.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Google definitely, the thing about Google or even Facebook, they want you to succeed, right? It's in their best interest that you engage deeper in their platform. It just makes the user experience better for their consumers. So I couldn't agree more. I think that there are resources out there. I've not run paid search for nonprofits, but definitely encourage you to check that out. To be completely honest, if I was going to put my energy into one channel, I would put it into Google and search and really making yourself findable versus social media. As I said, social media is great for your existing customer base, but Google just drives all traffic, right? If you're looking for hotels in Duluth, you Google them and then you naturally would probably book one.
Yeah, that's super interesting. We're getting close to the end of time. Maybe I'll just give you one more, Katie, and I apologize to everyone. We couldn't get to all of the questions here, but I think this one might be helpful. How can, people on this call or others at their organizations provide really great customer care? You emphasized that before on social media. Would you have any recommendations for customer care on social media?
I think the first thing is respond to everyone, right? Everyone, even if they come at you, I mean, if it's really toxic, see what you need to do with that. But do acknowledge people, and I think too, you can two things, acknowledge them and say, yep, I'm going to get back to you. I think also sometimes offering them a personal line, it might not be your personal phone line, but if you have a social media dedicated customer care line, a lot of times what I see is they'll say, oh, they'll say, oh, can you call this 800 number? And they say, oh, I was on hold for an hour and then my call got dropped or something, right? So if you can actually engage on the platform. The other thing that sounds really silly but it's not silly, is being very intentional about telling people to send you direct messages or private messages. In the banking space, we have people that literally will list like their social security number and their bank account on our Facebook page. So kind of if you can move it off of the general comment page to either do a direct message, a private message, or give them a call, that actually really exceeds their expectations, because that's when you can really troubleshoot. Almost all customer care at its heart need something like a phone call. And even if that phone call is just, I'm so frustrated and I just want to yell at you, Delta, because I'm mad that my flight's delayed. But moving that offline or to other channels is what's really effective. But address people, make sure that they know that they're heard, and do it quickly, right? I keep hammering on Delta. I personally love Delta, but if somebody is at the airport for 6 hours, they don't want to hear from you 2 days later. So expediency is really key. It really is I would argue, almost a full-time job in a for-profit space. And in the nonprofit space, it's something that you should be checking and engaging with every day.
Great. We're going to end it there. And I just have to say thank you so much, Katie. This is really informative, totally engaging. And I think people are going to really appreciate the slides and those resources being sent in the email after this. So thank you, Katie, for joining us. Everyone who's on the call, thank you for joining us today. Our goal with these sessions is to provide smart topics and really practical applications. I think we achieved that today. So I hope you're all able to, take something away that was insightful for you. Those qualities of smart and practical are really the spirit behind all of our CAPE programming. So if you're looking for additional professional development opportunities, please check out our website for upcoming learning sessions. I did just want to highlight, earlier Katie she teaches in our strategic social media program, and our next session is on August 25th. So if you found today's topic really interesting or know someone from your company who could benefit from some time in the classroom with Katie and some other outstanding marketing instructors, please check out that program. We're done on time, so tell your network about our online learning series. Don't forget to register for our upcoming sessions. Thank you so much for joining us at the University of St. Thomas this morning. I hope you have a really wonderful day, everyone. Be well. We'll see you the next time.